Have you ever looked at someone in power and thought, how did they get there? You're not alone. We've all watched as unfit individuals climb to extraordinary heights, while those with real substance stay invisible, passed over in silence. Picture Caligula, a Roman emperor so erratic he once declared war on the sea. Or closer to now, Adam Newman, who turned inflated promises into billions at WeWork before the illusion collapsed. These aren't isolated flukes. They're patterns. So common, they start to feel deliberate. And maybe they are. What if there's a darker logic at work? What if this is how the game is designed? What if the least worthy are often the first to rise? Today, we're stepping into the mind of one of history's most misunderstood political thinkers, Niccolò Machiavelli. His thoughts may be centuries old, but their shadow stretches into boardrooms, parliaments, even everyday conversations. He didn't speak of how leaders should behave. He told us how they actually do. And what he saw was disturbing. Incompetence doesn't just slip into power by mistake. Sometimes it's built into the design. What if the game itself is tilted, not toward brilliance, but toward boldness? Not toward wisdom, but toward appearance? Back in the early 1500s, Machiavelli was cast out of politics, exiled from the world he loved. He sat down and wrote The Prince. It wasn't a book of dreams. It was a manual for survival in a world where image beats truth. Everyone sees what you seem to be, he wrote, but few touch what you really are. That sentence, it's more than observation. It's a warning. In the arena of power, seeming competent is often more useful than being competent. And for truly intelligent people, that's a problem, because with intelligence comes burden, the need for nuance, the pull of ethics, the curse of overthinking. Drop a reflective mind into a ruthless system and watch what happens. Where others shout, they hesitate. Where others simplify, they analyze. Where others promise impossible, they speak hard truths. And in a world addicted to certainty, that makes them look weak. Take Socrates, a man who questioned everything, who challenged assumptions, and invited people to think. And for that, they sentenced him to death, not because he was wrong, but because his doubt made others uncomfortable. Now look at the populace. Leaders win hearts by offering simple answers to complex problems. Trust me, I alone can fix it. No nuance, no hesitation, just certainty. And that certainty, even when false, becomes magnetic. Socrates once said, I know that I know nothing. That humility made him a philosopher for the ages, but it also ensured he would never rise to power. Meanwhile, those who claim to know everything, even when they know very little, climb faster. In 2017, the Journal of Management published a troubling study. It found that intelligence improves leadership effectiveness, but only up to a point, specifically around an IQ of 120. Beyond that, it actually starts to hurt. Why? Because very smart people think differently. They speak in layers. They see exceptions where others want rules. Their minds move too fast. And for many, that feels alien, distant, hard to follow. Imagine that. Your intelligence could be the very thing that blocks your path to leadership. Agree with the study or not. It forces us to ask, what kind of intelligence does power really reward? Because raw intellect isn't the whole story. Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room often becomes the most influential, not the wisest, not the most experienced, just the most confident? That's not an accident. It's a glitch in the way our minds work. Back in the late 1990s, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger uncovered something remarkable, a cognitive illusion, one that now carries their name, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It works like this. The less people know, the more certain they become. And the more someone truly understands, the more doubt they feel. Fools are always so sure themselves, wrote Shakespeare, while wise men are full of doubts. Centuries before Dunning and Kruger, Machiavelli would have nodded in recognition. He saw it, too, in courtrooms, in palaces, in politics. The confident rise. The thoughtful often fall silent. Modern studies confirm it. In 2020, the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology published research showing that people with inflated self-views are more likely to be seen as leaders, not because they perform better, but because they seem more certain. And in moments of uncertainty, we cling to certainty, even when it's fake. Just look at figures like General George Armstrong Custer. His unwavering self-belief led to disastrous battlefield losses. But it didn't stop his rise or his legacy, or in tech, where charismatic founders pitch impossible dreams and walk away with billions, while quieter, more competent builders are left behind. Take Adam Neumann, for example, the founder of WeWork. His business model was shaky at best, but his confidence, unshakable. Investors lined up, not because of what he built, but because of how he sounded. But it doesn't stop at rising to power. The real danger begins when incompetence settles in, when it builds walls around itself and spreads. Machiavelli noticed something subtle and terrifying. Weak leaders don't like to be challenged. So what do? They surround themselves with people even weaker than they are. In The Prince, he wrote, "If you want to understand a ruler's mind, look at the people he keeps close." Because the unspoken strategy is this: never be outshined, never be outsmarted, never be threatened. And so the system begins to rot from within, not because of one bad apple, but because that apple is carefully planting trees that will never grow taller. Organizational psychologist Dr. Taito Camera calls it a threat to competence. When insecure leaders feel endangered by the capable, they choose loyalty over talent, flattery over skill, predictability over innovation. This creates a drought, a spreading famine of competence. It flows outward from the center of power, replacing insight with obedience, initiative with silence. Think back to Emperor Commodus. In ancient Rome, he purged talented administrators and filled his court with entertainers and sycophants. The result? A weakened empire, one step closer to collapse. And this is an ancient history. In Brazil, in Central Asia, in corporate boardrooms, the pattern repeats. Positions filled not by merit, but by connections, by personal loyalty, by who will never question the throne. In Zimbabwe, during Robert Mugabe's final years, loyal party insiders replaced skilled managers. The economy crumbled, and the system still protected the leader. Psychologists have a name for this: homophily, the tendency of people in power to surround themselves with others who look, think, and act like them. And when that happens, real challenge disappears. Fresh ideas vanish. What's left is a quiet, smiling wall of mediocrity. Even when we know better, we still reach for the wrong hands. Again and again, we choose leaders who offer simple answers, not because we're foolish, but because we're human. Our minds are wired, not for complexity, but for clarity, not for truth, but for comfort. You see, true experts rarely offer certainty. They speak with caution. They weigh trade-offs. They admit what they don't know. But to the average ear, that sounds weak, unsettling. Most people don't want a complex answer. They want the answer. They crave the illusion of control, even if it's just that, an illusion. Machiavelli once wrote, "People admire appearances more than they admire reality." And he was right. In times of fear, we follow the loudest voice, not the wisest one. Just look at how climate scientists speak. They talk in probabilities, margins of error, long timelines. It's honest, it's real, and it's ignored. Now look at how influencers or populists talk about the same topic. Sharp, confident, absolute, no debate. And that kind of certainty, it spreads faster than truth. Healthcare debates, same pattern. Doctors speak of compromise, of systems with trade-offs. But politicians, they promise perfection. No downsides, no sacrifice, just solutions. And guess who gets a spotlight? In 2017, researchers at Yale ran an experiment. They gave people political math problems, real data, hidden in complexity. Here's what they found. People interpreted the numbers not based on logic, but on what matched their beliefs. And the smarter the person, the more biased they became. Why? Because intelligence doesn't always seek truth. Sometimes it just builds better justifications for what we already want to believe. This is called cognitive closure. The hunger for clarity, even when reality is unclear. And in moments of crisis, that hunger becomes a craving. We become vulnerable, desperate, and drawn to black and white answers, to leaders who radiate certainty, even when they're wrong. It's a dangerous loop. The more chaotic the world becomes, the more we cling to those who promise to simplify it. Here's the part no one wants to admit. Being smart is enough, because when power is at stake, morality can become a disadvantage. Machiavelli saw this with chilling clarity. He wrote, "A ruler must learn how not to be good and know when to use that skill, not because he admired cruelty, but because he knew ethics can slow you down in a race where others are cutting corners." The more intelligent a person is, the more they reflect. They think through consequences. They feel the weight of right and wrong. But while they're doing all that, someone else, less bound, more ruthless, is already 5 steps ahead. They lie. They manipulate. They make promises they never planned to keep. And they don't flinch. Think of Cicero, brilliant, moral, principled. And then think of Julius Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon, both literally and morally, and won. Even today, the pattern holds. Ethical candidates often lose to those who weaponize lies, because the truth is slow, doubt is careful, but deception is fast and loud. A study from the University of British Columbia found something alarming. Traits like charm, combined with lack of empathy, what psychologists call dark triad behaviors, were actually strong predictors of career success. Let that sink in. Across cultures, from ruthless business figures in China to polished manipulators in Scandinavia, the same dynamic plays out. Manipulation outpaces integrity. This becomes what game theorists call a race to the bottom. When dishonesty works, everyone else feels pressure to play dirty or be eliminated. Over time, these behaviors stop being the exception. They become the rule. What was once shameful becomes strategy. It's easy to feel hopeless hearing this. But Machiavelli wasn't telling us to give up. He was showing us what we're up against. But here's the twist. Incompetence doesn't thrive everywhere. It needs the right conditions. It needs cover, a system that protects it, feeds it, and lets it hide in plain sight. Machiavelli knew this, too. He understood that different environments reward different traits. Some structures expose weakness. Others bury it. So what determines which path a system will take? It comes down to 3 forces: feedback, accountability, and how power is distributed. Let's start with feedback. In some fields, failure is obvious, immediate, unforgiving. A surgeon loses a patient. An engineer builds a bridge that collapses. Mistakes become headlines. And those professions filter out incompetence fast. But in politics, in corporate boardrooms, in media, the signals are murkier. Failures can be blamed on predecessors or hidden behind spin. Mistakes, rebranded as strategy. In these foggy environments, weakness goes undetected. Or worse, it gets rewarded. Now look at power structures. When too much control sits in too few hands and there's no one to push back, bad decisions don't just happen. They multiply. The fall of the Soviet Union wasn't just about ideology. It was also a design failure, a system where critical feedback couldn't reach the top and power faced no real consequence. Contrast that with Germany's corporate model, where power is split between a management board and a supervisory board. Decisions must pass through two gates. That slows down recklessness and makes it harder for unqualified leaders to rise unchecked. Another danger? Information asymmetry, when success is hard to define and results are open to interpretation. Style begins to beat substance. People judge what they see, not what they know, and most of us aren't trained to detect true competence, especially in complex systems. Machiavelli said it plainly. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because what's visible feels real, and what's hidden, even if it's essential, is ignored. There's one more piece to the system, and it might be the most powerful of all: incentives. Because even the smartest structures can fail if they reward the wrong things. Think about it. What kind of behavior gets promoted in your world? What gets applause, bonuses, titles? In systems that prize short-term wins over long-term results, charisma rises, substance fades, and the illusion of success becomes more valuable than actual success. Look at the 2008 financial crisis. Executives chased quarterly profits, took reckless risks, walked away with bonuses while the world paid the price. That wasn't just greed. It was design, a system that rewarded the illusion of growth and punished restraint. Now ask yourself, what about your environment? Are thoughtful voices heard or sidelined? Are complex truths respected or replaced with pleasing stories? The architecture of power matters, because when good systems collapse, the void gets filled by performance, by people who look like leaders, but build nothing. And even in well-structured organizations, the unqualified can still survive. How? By mastering psychological tactics, the kind Machiavelli would recognize instantly. First, tribalism. Draw a line between us and them. Turn criticism into betrayal. Make every attack feel personal, not just against the leader, but against the group. When identity fuses with leadership, truth becomes irrelevant. Only loyalty matters. Second, cognitive overload. Flood the system with drama, one crisis after another. Scandals, outrage, noise, until no one has the energy to focus. No time to reflect. Just survive the next headline. Third, distortion of truth. Constant contradictions, shifting narratives, history rewritten in real time, so fast that facts lose their shape, and memory becomes unreliable. Machiavelli once wrote, "The crowd is always taken by appearances, not out of stupidity, but because the brain evolved for a simpler world. Not this, not an endless fog of information and illusion. It's one thing to see the darkness. It's another to push back. Understanding these patterns, it matters, but awareness alone won't save us. We need tools, strategies, ways to resist and rebuild. Let's start where all resistance begins. Inside, within the mind. Your first line of defense is awareness. Knowing how manipulation works makes it less effective, and that protection begins with 3 habits. First, intellectual humility, the ability to say, I don't know, to question your own certainty. Studies show people with high humility are better at evaluating ideas based on truth, not tone. It's like a mental immune system. It shields you from seductive lies, the same way your body fights off infection. Second, media literacy. Learn to separate signal from spectacle. Don't just consume, analyze. Ask who is speaking, what's missing, why now? As Warren Buffett once said, successful people say no a lot, and that includes saying no to noise, to hype, to distractions dressed as information. Third, philosophical reflection. Create space in your life for stillness, not scrolling, not reacting, thinking. Ask yourself the deeper questions. Why does this idea move me? Is it true or just comforting? The Stoics practiced this daily. So did Bacon. He wrote, "A wise man creates more opportunities than he finds." These aren't soft skills. They're survival tools. But individual strength isn't enough. Systems matter. So what do strong systems look like? First, independent feedback loops. Structures that surface truth, regardless of charisma or popularity. Compare a company with a real board of directors to one where the board just rubber stamps whatever the CEO wants. Guess which one sees trouble coming? The Boeing 737 MAX tragedy wasn't just an engineering failure. It was a silence failure. Voices were ignored to protect profits. Second, cognitive diversity. Include people who see the world differently, who challenge each other. It's not about ticking boxes. It's about exposing blind spots before they become disasters. Third, transparency. Make systems legible. When rules are clear, competence wins. When everything's hidden in complexity, the charismatic thrive. Ask yourself, do your communities have these safeguards? Or are they missing? Because if we rebuild our systems around competence, humility, and truth, what kind of world could we create? And now we return to the man who started it all, Niccolò Machiavelli. For centuries, he was misunderstood, portrayed as a villain, a schemer, a cold advisor to tyrants. But that's not who he was. He didn't endorse the darkness he described. He exposed it. He wasn't saying, be cruel. He was saying, this is how cruelty survives. He believed we could build better systems, but only if we first understood the real ones, not the ones we dream of, but the ones we live in. He reminded us, men honor titles, but it's the people who give them meaning. Power in itself is nothing. It must be earned, justified, used wisely. This meeting point between ancient philosophy and modern psychology reveals something raw, something uncomfortable, but necessary, because we cannot change what we refuse to see, and we cannot rise until we understand what keeps us down. The path forward isn't pretending these dynamics don't exist. It's designing systems that account for them, that resist manipulation, that reward truth, and cultivate courage. It's building practices that keep us grounded, disciplines that sharpen clarity and shield us from illusion. Because yes, sometimes stupidity does climb to power, but intelligence, when paired with moral strength, remains our best hope for a world where merit still matters. So ask yourself, what patterns do you see around you? Where do these forces play out? In your community, your workplace, your mind? And if this exploration sparks something in you, share it, talk about it with someone who needs it, because remembering the dark isn't surrendering to it. It's learning to create light. Thank you for listening. Until next time.